Welcome to Building My Legacy podcast. This podcast is designed for leaders and entrepreneurs who want to leave a legacy and will provide strategies that focus upon key elements for legacy creation, determining your desired impact and its benefit, increasing your legacy's reach by engaging key stakeholders, planning, prioritizing, and executing. Here's your host, Dr. Lois Sonstegard.
Welcome, everybody, to today's Building My Legacy podcast. I have with me today Michelle Bernard. She is interesting because she is fascinated by cultures and by the influence that cultures can have on us, and then, of course, what we can contribute in return. And one of the things that she does is to work with women in leadership, particularly who are looking at using their international experience in business. So those of you who may be in the expat world and looking at what's next in your life, Michelle may be a great resource for you. So Michelle, tell us a little bit about your journey, what got you into this, and part of what your next steps are going to be in building what you're doing.
Definitely. Well, thank you, Lois, for having me on the podcast today. It's a joy to see another fellow Minnesotan of mine and also just connect with you and hear a little bit about your leadership skills and the years that you've had. So thank you for having me first and foremost. And like you said, I'm a leadership coach, and I love other cultures. That really began from a young age. I grew up in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and we have about, I don't know the exact number, but over 100 different people groups just in Minneapolis, which is so exciting to me. And I loved growing up and seeing people that seemed slightly different than me or completely different. And I just had a very curious mind and wanted to get to know what made them different. And, even down to how this food tastes different and it smells different than what I'm used to. I wonder what's special about it to them. So it really began from just a place of curiosity and wanting to know more about other people's stories and culture from a very young age. So that's how I got involved in a passion for culture and a passion for listening to people.
So you lived in Cambodia for a period of time, and so that's a very different culture. What were some of the things that you learned, and what was it about that experience that really drew you into wanting to work at the international level?
Definitely. I did an academic internship in Phnom Penh in Cambodia when I was in college, and I was studying culture in college. And so it was a lot of focus on language study, ethnographic research, learning about the culture, and doing some research on a specific aspect, which I actually did on expat women living in Cambodia. And just down to the basics of what are you observing in culture? What are you observing that clashes with your home culture? And also, what are you learning that you really love and cherish about this new culture? So for me, that was learning about Cambodia. And one of the things I remember that just really blew me away and I loved and grew to really admire and want to bring home with me was their respect for elders. Living in Cambodia, you see that all over in daily life, just such an utter respect for their elders and for the senior citizens that I really loved and wanted to see happening more in my hometown and more back home. So that was one aspect of the Khmer culture that I just really grew to love and admire about them.
That is true. It's so true of Asian cultures in general. Tell me, when you work with expats, what have you observed? Are there challenges? What is it that draws you to them to look at? How do you help them with that next chapter in their life?
Definitely. Yeah, I think a lot of expats go in with amazing expectations that there's going to be adventure, that's going to be new and exciting, which is all true. But some experience a longer honeymoon stage of excitement and enjoyment in that than others. Mine was kind of a fast honeymoon stage where arriving in Cambodia, it was exciting and new, but it quickly faded into the frustrations and feeling overwhelmed. So I really grew a heart for expats and just helping them navigate through the different stages of culture shock. And also, how do you continue to thrive in this culture in the midst of experiencing frustrations, missing home, just culture shock in general? There are so many things that you go deeper into with that. And so it was kind of my own experience living in Cambodia that really drew me to develop a heart for expats, and especially expat women, if they are going with their husband for a job, or if a job takes them overseas, or just wanting something new and fresh. It's challenging and exciting at the same time.
So there are challenges, and what is it that so let's be specific. What were some of those challenges? I understand it's the differentness of culture, and but there's something about that relative to how we grow up, how other cultures do things. So what is it that really challenges us um, to adapt? And it's what's interesting is we tend to think of it as, especially in Asian cultures, African cultures, but I see the same with people who go to Europe, because the process is different. How they do business is different. How they bank is different sometimes.
Yeah, definitely. I think from my experience and what I also observed just talking with expat women is a lot of the challenges were in just basic daily interactions, like going to the market. If you chose to go to a market that was more authentic to the Khmer culture rather than more of an Americanized or westernized grocery store, there was a lot of challenges just simply navigating through the market, speaking in a local language, or if you don't know the local language, just trying to communicate using hand gestures or whatever you can. So I think I saw and observed a lot of just very challenging moments in the basics. Traffic. How do you bring your kids to school? Which school do you choose? Language. Are you going to choose to go to language school and learn the local dialect, or are you going to try and get by with English or whatever other language you speak? Cooking, all of a sudden you have to learn how to cook with different equipment or in a different environment, depending on where you live, of course. And just the daily things really start to wear on you. So I think that's a huge, huge struggle and challenge that I encountered and also saw with other women and the men living there as expats too. And community. I think that's a big piece as well, is leaving your home and having that familiar aspect of, you kind of know the culture and you know how to interact. And now all of a sudden it's very new, very fresh. And even if you have a pocket of community from maybe your home country or one that's similar, there's still going to be challenges of interacting with the other people in your community too. It's a great challenge. It's exciting, but also frustrating too.
So what are some of the things that you've done to help people navigate this process? Because you're right. I think people can either kind of bury their heads in the sand and count the days, or they can see it as really a life experience from which they can grow and stretch. So how do you help people move through that? What are some of the things that you help them to focus on to shift?
Yeah, definitely. That's a great question. With some of my coaching clients, what I go through is a wheel that has different sections of what they're experiencing more than likely when they move abroad, whether that's the language piece or community or staying connected to their home culture and loved ones back home. Really, whatever it might be. Are they having fun, like recreation, doing things they enjoy, exploring new hobbies, or something that might be a new adventure for them? Just things that are really important to them and are just basic that people need, whether that's community or just exploring something new. And so I'll go through those different sections and the different options, and then have them kind of rate on a scale like how they feel they're doing in each section. So if if they don't know any of the language and they really have a burden and desire to know the language, maybe they rate themselves at a 2 when their goal would be to be at a 6 the next month. So then we would take them through the steps of practically, what is your next step? What do you need to do in order to keep that moving higher? And it's not necessarily about all having perfect 10s, because life is not perfect and you're not going to be scoring perfectly in every section, but really just what are the practical steps and how can we get you to move forward in the ones that are most important to you? And then also reprioritizing them too. Maybe for 1 month, having recreation isn't going to be as necessary and a bigger priority than finding rich community that you can do life together with and really just have that commonality of living the expat life together, or finding a local friend too. That's so important to know and understand the culture as well. So that's one aspect that I do to really help them walk through and navigate the different challenges of culture shock.
So one of the things that I found when I was living in Japan is that a lot of people don't know how to connect with local people. There's a fear of it, I think, partly because it's a new experience and language often is a barrier. But it's also knowing how to reach out. So how do you help them with that?
Yeah, definitely. That's such a great question. I think the biggest key would just be approachable and a humble learner. Because when you're entering into a new culture, you're going to make mistakes, whether you want to or not, it will happen at some point. So really just being a humble learner and going in with the attitude of, I'm here to learn from you and I want to be a friend, or just coming in with that humility and not, barging in and saying like, I've got it under control, my culture is better than you, but really just being approachable, I think, is a big piece. And I remember living in Cambodia, I could not get my gate unlocked and I was using the right key. I knew it and it was just jammed and it was not working at all. And so I remember some of my neighbors were standing at a short distance watching the whole thing, and they kind of kept on looking over like, I wonder if she's going to ask for help or if she's just going to try and do this on her own. And so after a little bit, I was just, this is an opportunity to humble myself, to walk up and ask for help. And we became good friends after that. I got to know them. I met their daughters and helped them one time when their chickens escaped. And so it was just a really great opportunity for me to approach them as a humble learner, saying, I don't have it all figured out. And right now I really need your help as a local, because it was a specific lock that they knew how to turn a certain way that I just didn't know at the time. And so I think that would be my first piece, is just approaching as a humble learner. Yeah.
Humility is huge in so many different ways, isn't it? And we can get through so much if we can just check our ego at the door and be ourselves, our natural selves. But I think many times, especially when we're in a foreign place, we think that we need to be somehow bigger than life. And sometimes we're treated that way. And so we feel that way even more so. Where do you see your work with your coaching going next?
Yes, I have always had the dream of living abroad myself. And so Cambodia, it felt like a 5-month taste of that, but it was only just a matter of tasting it, because I knew I wasn't going to be there, a longer term. And so that's been a dream of mine since I was a young girl, to really move abroad and experience the full package of staying somewhere for years. And that's actually what I'm hopefully planning on doing next year, as long as things with COVID are allowing to do. I'm looking at moving to Spain and planning on using my coaching business there to work with expats and then also help women in small businesses too.
Wow. Okay. So how have you gotten into working with women in small businesses? It's great, because the two kind of go together in some ways. Or it's a nice merge if you can have expats find a place to help there. But what got you into the interest in working with small business?
Definitely. In college, I actually started having an interest in business when I was maybe a junior or senior. And at the time, I wasn't studying business, but would go to business seminars and talk with my friends in business classes and just kind of begin to soak in and listen to what does it actually take to run a business? And is this something that I'm wired for or interested in? So it really began just out of a personal interest and kind of testing the waters a little bit to see if that's something that I thought I could do. And starting my coaching business about 2 years ago now was my first step into creating a small business. And I have loved it, absolutely loved it. But there's no way that it could have been possible for me to get where I'm at now without a business coach and someone helping me along the way and being a mentor for me and looking at my passions for moving abroad, cultures, empowering women and service-minded women. It kind of all fits together when I look at the big picture that these all collide. And I would love to be a coach for women in small businesses, whether that's women in a foreign country and their locals trying to start their own business, or whether it's an expat woman, because oftentimes expats are very adventurous or entrepreneurial. They'll have that mindset, oftentimes, not always. And so I think that it would be highly likely to run into expat women looking for some guidance or for coaching to help them get started or even rebrand or refocus on small businesses in a way that really honors the local culture. That's something that I'm very passionate about too, is coming in with a humble attitude in a way that will help their community and assist them in a way that honors their culture too.
That is something that is so frequently missed, isn't it? We see so many times people going in and reaping whatever benefits they can, and they leave, and sometimes with some distaste behind them. So it's marvelous that you're looking at doing that. And so some of the thoughts that you have in working collaboratively then with women, perhaps local expats, what are some of those challenges that you think you will be dealing with and that you're planning to work on?
Definitely. I think for myself, just continuing to be a learner, I'm still somewhat new to business. So I have a lot to learn and a lot of resources to really dive into just so that I know more of how businesses operate. And coaching is such a unique business that it's not like an art business where I'd have to learn a lot if I were coaching someone in that field. And so I think just learning a lot and doing some research on my own part. And then also some of the challenges I anticipate having abroad would be the cultural differences, especially if I'm working with local women in a foreign country. I think that would create fun challenges. And I really do mean fun, because it is fun to really dig into coaching questions of, okay, what is important about this specific part of your business? And I'm sure that at times I won't understand why a piece is so important to them, but really just asking those questions. And if they know it, and if they know it to be true for them, that's what will drive them. That's what will motivate them. And so really just stepping back and coming in as a learner, I think is going to be a challenge for me, but a good, healthy challenge. And I'm sure that it will be a challenge at the beginning to just learn and take a step back and observe what does this community need, and the people here know best what their community needs. So really just coming in with an observation of, let's let these locals really make the decisions, and coming alongside and being a coach for them, not necessarily consulting, but more of coaching. Yeah. So I'm excited for that.
Yeah, it sounds great. So I'm thinking as I'm listening to you, expats, I've seen expats in so many different arenas. And as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking, what would be the lessons you would like an expat to learn and to get out of that experience that they're having? Because you have the opportunity to shape that, help them shape it anyway. So ideally, what would you like that experience for them to look like?
I would love I would love for expats and including myself someday to really just look at the experience as one that's an opportunity to make an impact on others for the rest of your life. You're going to be impacting the people that you're working with abroad. You're going to be impacting your family and friends back home that you're sharing stories with and sharing how your experience has been going. And then the rest of your life, when you look back, like your stories with Japan, you're impacting me on how you share those. And I think it's such a great opportunity that expats have of being storytellers, being really good communicators and storytellers, and really making an impact on whoever they're sharing with, but especially the people that they're passionate about impacting and stepping into leadership roles and guiding others. I think that going internationally provides such a unique perspective that you just learn so much about yourself, so much about the world and how other people operate, that it creates a really great opportunity for you to impact others.
So part of what I'm hearing you say is you want to feel significant in your life, make a contribution, leave a legacy.
Yeah.
This is a route that you can take, right? Am I hearing you correctly when I say that?
Definitely. Yes.
And so for people who really want to leave something behind, this is a great opportunity. There's being thoughtful of it right from the beginning, so you shape it the way you want to shape it.
Yeah.
Because the alternative, which is also what I have seen, is people will step back and they will have thought it was a disastrous experience because they didn't shape it ahead of time. And the experience shaped them. And it was like a wave on a wave and just bobbing along and not ever feeling like they had it within their grip. Right. So
yeah. Unfortunately, I've seen that happen quite often too. Yeah.
That's the gift you'll be bringing to a lot of people. So I think for people who are listening from the business perspective, also who are living abroad, thinking of being abroad, have employees that go abroad, having resources like this could be incredibly valuable and useful, because you want your people to come back, don't you, that are going to be inspired, that have learnings that they can bring back, that just simply enrich your organization and environment as well.
Absolutely.
Michelle, our time is almost up. What have we not talked about that you would love the audience to know about before we end our conversation?
Well, it kind of ties in actually with what we're talking about right now is when you get back home or when you have an experience, there's this window of opportunity where you can really process it well and then share it well so that you have it for the future to share with, anyone that were to ask, how was your trip? Even if they're referring to an expat living abroad for 3 years. Oh, how was your trip? Well, how do you begin to share about 3 years in 30 seconds?
Right.
So I actually created a roadmap that's called the Leader's Roadmap to Lasting Impact, how to clearly communicate your international experiences in 5 easy steps. Because for me, returning back from multiple service trips in Asia and then living in Cambodia and serving in Europe as well for a bit, that question was so special. And I loved that people were curious enough to ask, but it was so overwhelming. How do you begin to share with 30 seconds? Like, oh, it was great. Okay. That wasn't very impactful to share. And so I created a free roadmap for people to download that gives 5 easy steps to go through on which stories are important to you to share. Why do you want to share them? Who would you love to share it with? And knowing your audience well enough to know which bridges of your story will connect with them the most, that will create a bigger impact. And then also knowing your timeline. Do I have 30 seconds to share one quick story? Do I have 5 minutes to share a longer one? Or do I even have like an hour to share with family and friends about my trip that was 2 or 3 years, or maybe even just a week trip? And so I created that mainly with the intent of helping people to clearly communicate their experiences from living or traveling abroad.
Wow, that's incredible. So, is there a place where people can go to download that?
Definitely. You can find that at my website, which is www.olivebranch, and that's spelled out AND, C.com. And then it's right at the top on the banner.
Got it. Okay. So her company name will also be in the show notes as well as her website. So those of you who are interested in getting this information and learning more, especially those of you who are expats and dying to know how to tell your story, this may be an interesting resource for you. Michelle, thank you so much for being with us today and sharing what you have learned and your experience and your dream for making this world a little bit better by having people understand one another better through their international experiences.
Thank you so much for having me. It was great talking and hearing a little bit of your story as well, Lois.
You are so welcome. And those of you who are listening to Building My Legacy podcast today, thank you for being with us. Please remember to visit our website at www.buildtomorrow.com, with 2 being the number 2, and our social media sites as well, which are buildtomorrow.com. Thanks very much, everybody.
You've been listening to Building My Legacy podcast with Dr. Lois Sonstegard. To book your appointment with Dr. Sonstegard, visit www.buildtomorrow.com.